Good morning, welcome to Walking Boxing. It is a Wednesday, October 30th, 2024, and day before Halloween, which is not such a big deal here in Australia, although it is getting bigger, I suppose. I see a lot more decorations around, and not sure do they do the trick-or-treating here? I'm not quite sure. They used to do it in our neighbourhood, but it was only one small little sort of street we did it, and little bit of fun, I suppose. I still can't sort of get my head around exactly what it is, but after spending a year in North America as a kid, I actually got right into it, and all their other events of the year, Thanksgiving and Easter and Christmas, they just do a little bit different over there. But anyway, that's another subject. But just on the Halloween thing, I'm not sure whether you've seen it, but Oscar De La Hoya. If you haven't seen it, check out his Instagram. I think it's on there, or his Facebook or Twitter, whatever it was, and I'm hoping it was just a test run of his Halloween costume, but he was dressed as, what would you best describe it as? A buck-tooth version of Axl Rose. He had the leather jacket, he had the long hair, the bandana, and he went out in public with it. I'm assuming, as I said, it was just a test run of maybe what he's going to wear on Halloween itself, but it was pretty funny. The worrying thing though was, I think he said something about maybe this might be his alter ego going forward, and hey, I love the Clackback Thursdays, I love the personality he shows, I love, the way, it's probably a lot different to the persona he actually had as a fighter. Come here, man. He's really sort of almost come out of his shell a lot more since being a promoter, and especially when a lot of people in the industry have had a bit of a crack at him. Well, he's puffed the chest out and said, all right, well, now you're going to see the spiteful Oscar anyway, but I thought it was pretty funny. So if you haven't seen it, check out his social media. It's pretty good. And the way he was speaking, or attempting to speak with the teeth in, it was bizarre. Anyway, one thing before I get into my topic for today. Great to see Tszyu, what's the best way to describe it? Just poke his head out back into society and say, I'm back. And it was only a 5 or 10 second video, or whatever it was, of him and his dog in his car. I think it was his dog, I'm assuming it was. It was just because when these things happen, the athletes themselves don't realise how the regard they're held in by the fans out there. So he would be, in his mind, ashamed and embarrassed and not quite sure how people are going to take to him. Of course, that's all crap, because 99% of boxing fans loved him and just want what's best for him. But it's amazing what goes through athletes' minds, and his thing would have been that. So I took it as the first step in his road back, and whether that's the ring or just his own mental well-being, I don't know, but it was just a sign to say, hey guys, here I am, I'm all good, and just the first step back in his own redemption. Because, as I said, in most boxing fans' eyes, he is a superstar, and they just want what's best for him. But I'm glad to see that he at least took the first step forward anyway. All right, on to today's topic. Now, yesterday I saw an article about, you would have seen earlier this week, or a couple of days ago, whatever it was, I did an episode on the Ali Foreman 50-year anniversary this week. And someone, I can't remember if it was his manager or an ex-promoter or something like that, said if that fight took place today, it would generate each fighter $200 million. That was the interest in the fight. And I thought, well, it's probably not a bad point. If that was the case with the Ali Foreman, you would have expected Ali Fraser to be in that same league, because at the time, that was the fight of the century. That's what it's nicknamed as. And as much as the relevance of Ali Foreman, I still think that Ali Fraser might have been the bigger fight at the time. Or maybe, look, I think they were just big on their own levels, and the relevance at the time. And I think the fact that Ali Foreman was in Zaire, and you can remember all the people yelling, Ali, is it Bombay or something, is it kill him, I think it means. And Foreman, who was really relegated to the villain. And in his opinion, if the fight maybe had been held anywhere else except where it was, it might have been a different story, because Muhammad Ali really grew a leg by having the fight over there, whereas on the flip side, George Foreman really struggled with the conditions and the response to him, and the pushback from the fans over there, and when they're screaming Ali, kill him, in their native language, that probably wouldn't go down too well as well. They almost he almost flew out of there because he got a cut and he wanted to go home, and they thought, well, if he leaves Africa, he'll never come back. And to the point where I think they might have even done something about confiscating their passports and having them go missing or something like that. But anyway, he did say that in this day and age, he reckons that fight would earn both fighters $200 million. And again, I think if that's the case, Ali Fraser 1 would have been there. But it got me thinking, some of those earlier super fights that we had, probably after that and up to the present day, what fights, or what did they get paid, and what would those fights be worth today based on the pay-per-view numbers today and the purses that are available. I haven't really gone anywhere like past probably the early 90s, and I've only got like 7 or 8 fights there anyway, but some of those, when I say super fights, I'm talking super fights, not just big fights that people wanted to see. And as I said, I've stopped probably at the end of the 80s, early 90s, whatever it is, because that's when purses really started to explode. But I would have thought the Ali Fraser 1 fight, and I think, just by the way, I think $200 million is too much for that Ali Foreman fight, unless maybe Turki Al-Sheikh was involved or something. But I would think they would probably still get, Ali might get 150 and Foreman might get 100 or something like that. That's probably where I think the fight is. Come on, man, let's go, buddy. I'm just going to grab Neil here because he's decided to be stubborn. Come here, man, let's go this way. All right, buddy. The next one I probably had on the list is Leonard Hearns in 81, I should say. Actually, we'll go back a bit. Leonard Duran won, which took place in 1980. That's probably the first real super fight. I think that would probably qualify for this. Now, just as a record, I wrote this down. For the record, Leonard received $9 million, which is actually a pretty good payday for that long ago. And even today, it wouldn't be a bad payday. But Duran only received $1.5 million, if you can believe that. So Leonard, $9 million. Duran, $1.5 million. That is bizarre. You would think in this day and age, I'm probably thinking, this is for the first fight, I'm probably thinking 60 or 70 for Leonard, and probably, I don't know, 40, 50 for Duran. Now, you got to remember too, in hindsight, they're probably 50-50. But back then, Duran coming up from lightweight, Leonard was a superstar, the Olympian, all that sort of stuff. So, so you got to put that into context. So I would probably say, 60-70 for Leonard, 40-50 for Duran. Then, and these guys feature prominently in these fights, by the way. The next one, as I said, was Leonard and Hearns #1. Now, I don't think, again in history, it was a massive fight, a welterweight unification fight, but I don't put it in the same category, in my opinion, as Leonard Duran one. I think in this one, maybe Leonard would receive, well, actually the amounts were Leonard was $8 million, Hearns $5 million, which is still, peanuts compared to today. So I would think that Leonard would have been maybe 50 or 60, so about $10 million less than he would have got for Duran, and Hearns maybe 30 or 40, so again, $10 million, but still, massive paydays. But back in 1981, what was it, 8 and 5. The next one we move on to is 1982. And this, for me, it's not one of the biggest fights of all time, but it generated some of the most interest of all time, and that is Holmes and Cooney in 1982 at Caesars Palace. Now, interestingly here, Cooney was relatively unproven. I know he'd beaten Ken Norton, a very, very old and aging Ken Norton in one round, and a couple other easy beats. Larry Holmes had multiple world title defences and was the champion, but surprisingly, both fighters got 50-50. They both got $10 million each. Now, on top of that injustice, I think, I mean, just on the purses, I think that in this day and age, being a heavyweight fight and the magnitude it is, both guys could have had 60, 70, 80 million dollars in this fight. That's how big the fight was. It wasn't a competitive fight because Jerry Cooney was a manufactured contender. I think we all know that in hindsight, but at the time, the interest in the fight because of the racial tones and Jerry Cooney being the great white hype and all this sort of stuff, not to mention that he was a very likeable guy and he'd had a couple of devastating knockout wins against those aging fighters. But it was interesting also in that fight that even though Larry Holmes was a defending champion, he had to enter the ring first. And he was introduced first, which is crazy. That's the ridiculousness of that fight. And I think Larry Holmes made Jerry Cooney pay, by the way, big time. But I think that's what it would have generated. Anyway, it would have been a massive, massive fight. Probably, I think it was a lot bigger fight than even these days with Fury and Usyk. I think the only fight that might rival it today would be Fury and Joshua in England. That would be massive, but back then that was the fight. Probably up until Tyson Spinks, probably the biggest heavyweight fight of that era. All right, still in the fabulous four, Hagler Leonard, 1987. Now, Hagler received $12 million, Leonard $11 million, and in my humble opinion, I think this fight was the true definition of super fight. The interest that it gained and the absolute superstars these two guys were and the intrigue involved in it. I think these days, both fighters could easily generate $80 to $90 million each. Because you got to remember also, you might think, Jesus, $80 to $90 million, that's just a fair stretch. You got to remember Mayweather, Pacquiao, I think Mayweather generated $200 million, Pacquiao 150, I think it was. And then you throw in the Conor McGregor fight, which is more of a circus act, but still. But I'm probably more basing it on Mayweather, Pacquiao. Hagler Leonard was in that mould. He likes to walk around poles here. That was in that mould of Mayweather, Pacquiao. And that might be a little bit hard for some fight fans of this era to understand, but Hagler Leonard was the fight. Now, so the actual purses were 12 for Hagler, 11 for Leonard, which I thought might have been the other way around initially, but that wasn't the case apparently. I double checked it yesterday, and that was the case. And still on Hagler, actually it was a couple of years before that, Hagler Hearns. Who could forget Hagler Hearns, one of the greatest fights of all time. Now, I thought both fighters, even for back then, were grossly underpaid. Hagler received $5.6 million, Hearns 5.4. Now that is the type of purses that Tank Davis and those types of guys just get for an average defence these days. Might be a little bit more than they get, but around the mark. They might get 3 to 4, the Devin Haneys of the world. Well, yeah, 5.6 to 5.4. Now that fight these days, I think easily generate, I won't say it's anywhere near as big as Hagler Leonard or Leonard even Duran, but I would think that would be on probably $40 or $50 million each, I would think these days. Just a massive, massive fight, and unlike a lot of other fights out there, it more than delivered. So, and then the last one I've got, this was probably the fight that started the big paydays. I'm talking Tyson Spinks. This is for the undisputed heavyweight title back in 1988. June 28th, I think, from memory. And the official purse for Tyson was $22 million. The official purse for Michael Spinks was $13.5 million. So again, that was probably, I think, in my opinion, the fight that just started this thing of the massive, massive paydays. Because back then, that's what, 36 years ago, that fight was amazing. So I would say these days, easily 120, 130 for Tyson, maybe 60 or 70 for Spinks. That's the sort of interest this fight generated. It was for the undisputed belts, of course, but just a massive, massive fight, and all for 90 seconds worth of work. Just crazy. So that's just some examples of how far we've come in the world of boxing as far as purses goes. And the one I'm still trying to get my head around is Roberto Duran receiving $1.5 million to fight Sugar Ray Leonard in the first fight in Montreal. Because you've got to remember, as I said, like the Tank Davis of the world wouldn't get out of bed for less than $2 or $3 million, and you've got one of the greatest fighters of all time in Roberto Duran receiving $1.5 million to fight one of the biggest fights of all time and winning that fight. So pretty crazy, and who knows where those purses are going to go in the future as the fights get bigger and bigger. Today, all right, on to one last thing for today, and that is just a quick bit of news that we're talking that maybe Joseph Parker will be the fighter that will step up to fight Daniel Dubois for that IBF belt on February 22nd if the Joshua fight or the Joshua rematch doesn't occur. By all accounts, Joshua is just waiting to see what happens with Fury and Usyk before he makes his next call. Apparently he does want the rematch, but I think probably makes sense that the winner of Fury, is it a winner, loser, whatever. You think it'd be the loser because you think that Dubois will fight the winner. But anyway, apparently he's just waiting to see what happens with that fight before he makes his decision. I think at this stage of his career, he's probably got to go for the Dubois fight, doesn't he? But anyway, that's his decision. But that is the talk at the moment that Joseph Parker is ready to step in on February 22nd on a Riyadh card, and that card, I think we've discussed it a little bit in the last few days with some of the fights that might be on that card, and it's looking really, really good. What were the other ones on there? There's been that many shows. Anyway, I think it was Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda was one of them. What was the other one? Anyway, I'm sure you know, I get a bit blank when I'm trying to go off the cuff anyway, but the February 22nd fight looks like, in my opinion, from what I've seen, and again, I've got a mental blank, look like, I think, probably the best card they've put together in the whole series they've done. Maybe not the biggest main event or whatever it might be, but the biggest card. And the only reason I'm a little bit confused because there's been a lot of fights that have been linked to it and then taken off and with others. But even those two fights, Dubois and Parker and Shakur Stevenson and Zepeda would be brilliant fights just as a start for that card anyway. It'll probably come to me as soon as I turn the camera off anyway. But anyway, so that is it for today, guys. Again, give me your thoughts on the purse situations. What do you think that what they got paid was about right? What do you think? What do you think they would be paid today? It's an interesting topic anyway. But give us your thoughts. But that is it for today, guys. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.